Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yes.
This time we're going to be looking at a concept that comes from Buddhist thought that might surprise you a little bit. And that's skillfulness. We're going to be going beyond just being good or being a good person. And really going to be diving into how the Buddha viewed action and intention in kind of a whole new way. Our source material for this deep dive is a section called The Wings to Awakening. And this is from a larger Buddhist text called Pasted Text.
Got it.
And we're going to see how, through this text, we can look at action and intention as kind of the mechanics of how our minds shape our reality.
Yeah, what's really interesting is that the Buddha approached this topic of skillfulness a little bit differently than everybody else who was around at the time. He wasn't really caught up in abstract theories about, like, the universe or anything like that. His focus was much more on what we do.
I've always found that focus on action in Buddhism to be really refreshing. So what was the prevailing thought at the time that he was pushing back against?
Well, imagine you're in ancient India. You're surrounded by intellectuals. And there are these two main camps of thought. One group of people believed that the universe was completely deterministic. Meaning that everything was fated. The other camp insisted that everything was random. Pure chaos.
So it's kind of like a cosmic debate between destiny and chance.
Exactly.
How does skillfulness fit into all this, though?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. The Buddha noticed that even the people who believed in a predetermined universe or a chaotic one, they still acted with purpose. They still, debated. They still had goals. They still tried to convince each other of things. So their actions, in a way, contradicted their own beliefs.
So he saw this disconnection and was like, wait a minute. If skill didn't matter, why are you even bothering?
Exactly. He recognized that humans are inherently driven to try to improve.
To master things.
The master things. We see it everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Learning a new language or perfecting a recipe. That drive is at the heart of skillfulness.
And I think that really resonates with a lot of us. Just that idea of wanting to get better at something, of honing our skills. I think we all kind of know deep down that our actions can shape outcomes.
And that's like the foundation of the Buddha's entire teaching. The very idea that we could become scared at something, it has huge implications.
What are some of those implications?
Well, first of all, it means that actions have real consequences. If everything was just preordained or random, why bother trying to improve?
You're just along for the ride at that point.
Exactly. Skill wouldn't even matter.
It'd be like saying practice is pointless. Which just doesn't line up with human experience.
Totally.
So what
the second implication is that some results are better than others. We strive for improvement because we value certain outcomes over others.
Like we're not just passively floating along. We're aiming for something.
Exactly.
With a directionality to our actions.
And the third implication is that we can learn from our mistakes. Like our actions aren't totally set in stone. There's room to adjust and refine and grow. That's the beauty of skill development.
So that kind of flips the script on that whole fate versus chance debate.
It does.
The Buddha is essentially saying that we have agency.
Exactly. We have the power to shape our life. But that power requires cultivation. And the key ingredient in cultivating skillfulness is attention. Now, that's a word we hear a lot these days. It is.
And it's obviously very important. What did the Buddha say about how attention relates to this idea of skillfulness?
He taught that mastering any skill, whether it's playing an instrument or building a house, whatever it is, requires paying attention to three things.
Is it what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what happens as a result?
First, it's about understanding the pre-existing conditions or the situation at hand. Like what's the context? What factors are already in play?
Kind of like a builder surveying the land before they start construction.
Exactly. The second thing is paying attention to our own actions. Like what are we actually doing in response to the situation?
So it's not enough to just understand the situation. We also have to be mindful of how we're choosing to respond. What's the third thing?
The third thing is we need to pay attention to the results. What happened because of what we did? Did our actions lead to the outcome that we desired?
So it sounds like he's describing this constant feedback loop. Where You assess the situation, take action, see the results.
Exactly.
And then use that information to adjust your approach.
Exactly. And this constant cycle of attention and adjustment is how we refine any skill. And it's fascinating how this applies not just to practical skills, but also to the path of enlightenment itself.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting to me.
Yeah.
How did the Buddha apply these principles of skillfulness to the bigger picture?
Yeah.
To the quest for liberation?
He saw the Four Noble Truths.
Okay.
Which are the foundation of his teachings.
Right.
As the most skillful way to view all experience.
So can you remind me what the Four Noble Truths are? Because I need a little refresher sometimes.
In essence, they are.
Yeah.
The truth of suffering.
Okay.
The truth of the cause of suffering.
Okay.
The truth of the end of suffering.
Okay.
And the truth of the path to the end of suffering.
So it's acknowledging that suffering exists, understanding where it comes from, knowing that freedom from suffering is possible, and then having a way to get there.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the Buddha outlines specific qualities and practices to cultivate on that path, all rooted in skillful action.
Okay.
One of the most important is right intention or right resolve.
So not just good intentions, but intentions that are wise and lead towards liberation.
Exactly. It's aligning our motivations with wisdom and compassion, making sure our actions are truly beneficial.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What other practices kind of fall under this umbrella of skillful action?
Another key practice is right concentration, which is about refining our feelings and perceptions through meditation.
So it's kind of like a musician practicing scales to master their instrument.
That's a great analogy.
You know, they're training their attention. They're refining their technique.
Exactly.
Okay.
By training our attention, we can calm and steady the mind, leading to deeper insights into the nature of reality.
So all of this feels very practical and applicable.
It is.
You know, we're not just talking about abstract philosophy.
It's a set of skills.
Yeah, it's a set of skills that can be developed.
Yeah, and things get even more intriguing when we look at the concept of non-fashioning.
Non-fashioning?
Yeah, the text describes it as a point where skillful action leads to a natural disengagement from the cycle of suffering.
So skillful action eventually leads to a state beyond action.
It does.
That sounds paradoxical.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But think about it this way.
Okay.
The more skilled we become at something, the less effort is required.
Okay.
Our actions become more spontaneous, more in harmony with the natural flow of things.
Okay, I think I'm starting to grasp it a little bit.
Yeah.
But how does non-fashioning actually come about?
Well, it's described as a state of liberation.
Okay.
Where the mind is free from the constraints that cause suffering.
Okay.
The difficult concept to grasp.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So how did the Buddha communicate all these ideas?
Yeah.
I mean, did he just capture people on the skillfulness, or how did he get these ideas across?
Not at all.
Okay.
He's a master storyteller.
Okay.
And the text mentions how he often used metaphors. From craftsmanship, art, athletics, to illustrate his points.
To make them relatable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Make these profound ideas relatable to people.
So instead of just talking at people, he was meeting them where they were at.
Yeah.
Using
imagery.
Familiar imagery.
Yes.
To get these profound truths across.
And here's a fascinating fact.
Okay.
A lot of medication texts from that time actually use terms that are borrowed from ancient Indian music theory.
Really?
Yeah, so they'll talk about training the mind, picking up a theme, finding the right pitch of effort.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So it really emphasizes that practical, experiential nature of the Buddha's teachings.
Yeah.
It's not just about thinking about these concepts, but actually feeling them.
Yeah, living them.
Living them, yeah.
He was inviting people to become virtuoso performers.
I love that. Yeah. In the symphony of existence.
Yes.
So we've laid this groundwork of understanding skillfulness as the foundation of the Buddhist path.
Yeah.
But let's get a little bit more practical.
Okay.
What specific takeaways from the text can we apply in our own lives?
That's a great question. The text delves into how to differentiate between good intentions and skillful ones.
Okay.
Explores the roots of good and evil actions.
Okay.
And even highlights the power of confession and making amends.
This is getting really interesting. I can't wait to explore those points further.
Yeah.
But for now, let's pause here
and
pick up the conversation in part 2
Sounds good.
of this deep dive. Welcome back. Before the break, we were about to unpack some of the practical takeaways from the Wings to Awakening.
Yeah.
I'm so eager to hear how this ancient wisdom can be applied to our lives today.
Yeah, there's so much to explore.
Yeah.
One key takeaway is the importance of distinguishing between good intentions and truly skillful ones. The text really emphasizes that even well-meaning actions can be unhelpful if they lack wisdom and insight.
So it's not enough to just have a good heart.
Right.
You know, like there's more to it than just wanting to do the right thing.
Exactly. Sometimes even the best of intentions can be clouded by ignorance. We might act impulsively or fail to grasp, the full consequences of our choices.
Can you give me an example?
Sure.
I'm a big fan of concrete examples.
Of course.
To help me understand.
Let's say you have a friend who's struggling financially. And you want to help them. Right. Your intention is good. You genuinely want to alleviate their suffering.
Right.
But what if you lend them a large sum of money without really understanding the root cause of their financial troubles?
So what if they're struggling with a gambling addiction or something?
Exactly.
Or have some other issue that's contributing to their financial woes?
Right. In that case, your good intentions might actually enable their harmful behavior.
Yeah, you might be making the problem worse.
Exactly.
In the long run.
Skillful action requires us not only compassion, but also a deep understanding of cause and effect.
Right.
It's about seeing the bigger picture.
This is making me think about times when maybe I acted with good intentions, but maybe not with the fullest understanding of a situation.
Right.
It's a good reminder to pause and reflect.
It is.
Before jumping into action.
Yeah, the text also offers a thought-provoking perspective on the roots of both good and evil actions.
Now that sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
What did the Buddha have to say about that?
Well, he didn't view people as inherently good or bad. He said that people act in harmful ways due to unskillful thinking. And conversely, when they cultivate skillful thinking, positive actions kind of arise naturally.
So it's all about the quality of our minds.
It is.
The way we perceive and interpret the world.
Yes. And since thinking is a skill that can be developed, this opens up the possibility of transformation. We can actively cultivate more skillful ways of thinking. And as a result, live more ethically.
There's something very hopeful about that idea.
Yeah.
Because it means that even if we've made mistakes in the past, we can learn from them.
Exactly.
And make different choices going forward.
Yes, the text highlights the power of confession and making amends as part of this process of growth. There's a story about King Ajatasattu who committed a terrible act. He killed his own father to secure his position on the throne.
That's intense.
Yeah.
So what happened when he confessed his actions to the Buddha?
Well, the Buddha didn't condemn him. He acknowledged the severity of his actions, but also emphasized that it's always possible to make a fresh start. He encouraged the king to learn from his mistake and dedicate himself to living a more skillful life.
So the Buddha wasn't focused on punishment or judgment or anything. He was really prioritizing rehabilitation and growth.
Exactly. It seems like confession in this context is less about dwelling in guilt and more about taking responsibility and moving forward.
Right. Using it as a catalyst for change.
Exactly. The text also provides guidance on how to cultivate that skillful mind in the first place. And it emphasizes both internal and external factors.
Internal and external factors. Tell me more.
Internally, it's about developing what's called appropriate attention.
So that sounds like a mental skill.
Yeah.
How would you describe appropriate attention?
It's the ability to observe our thoughts objectively. Without judgment or getting swept away by them. We can ask ourselves, is this thought helpful?
Right.
What might happen if I act on it?
So it's kind of like becoming a curious observer of our own minds.
Exactly.
Noticing our thoughts and emotions without getting
totally entangled.
Entangle in them.
As we cultivate this appropriate attention, we start to see the world through a clearer lens. We can apply the wisdom of the Four Noble Truths. Recognizing the truth of suffering. And the possibility of liberation.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about the external factors that you mentioned?
Yeah.
How do those come into play?
The text emphasizes the importance of friendship with admirable people. So it's about surrounding ourselves with those who embody wisdom, compassion, ethical conduct.
I've heard that saying. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Exactly.
It sounds like the Buddha was saying something similar. He was encouraging us to seek out those positive influences.
But it goes even deeper than that. It's not just about who we spend time with, but about actively seeking guidance and inspiration
Uh-huh.
from those who are further along on the path of skillful living.
So it's about being intentional with who we learn from,
Exactly.
who we look up to,
Yes.
and whose examples we try to emulate.
Their wisdom and actions
Yeah.
can be a powerful mirror,
Uh-huh.
reflecting back to us
Okay.
our own potential for skillful living.
Okay.
And the internal and external factors actually work together as we cultivate more skillful attitudes and behaviors. We'll naturally be drawn to more admirable people who in turn support our continued growth.
It's like a positive feedback loop.
It is.
Where skillfulness attracts skillfulness.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that the text highlights when it comes to developing this skillful way of life?
There's a really interesting section of discerning truth.
Okay.
The text tells the story of the Buddha's encounter with the 𝙀𝙖𝙞𝙀.
Okay.
This was a group of people who were really confused by the conflicting teachings of various spiritual teachers.
Oh, yeah, I think I've heard of this story.
You have.
Isn't that where the Buddha encourages people to think critically and not blindly follow tradition or authority?
It is. Yes, it's often cited as the Buddha's endorsement of free inquiry.
Right.
But there's a nuance that the text points out.
Okay.
While the Buddha encouraged critical thinking, he also emphasized the importance of considering the wisdom of those who have experience and insight.
So it's not a complete rejection of all external guidance?
No, it's about finding that balance between independent thinking and learning from those who have walked the path before us.
Right. We need both.
We do.
Our own inner compass.
Yes.
And the guidance of wise mentors.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah, it is.
And the text reminds us to approach both with discernment.
This whole conversation is really making me reflect on my own approach to learning and decision-making. You know, it's inspiring me to think more critically, be more aware of my intentions, and to seek out wise guidance in my life.
That's great.
This is fantastic. But we've covered so much ground today.
We have.
Should we pause here again?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before moving on to the final part of this deep dive.
There's still so much to uncover in the Wings to Awakening.
Yeah.
And I'm eager to share more insights with you.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into skillfulness.
Yeah.
We've covered so much ground already.
We have.
Everything from the historical context of the Buddha's teachings to these really practical tips for cultivating a skillful mind.
Right.
I'm finding this whole concept incredibly relevant to my life.
Yeah.
Especially in today's world.
Me too. The Wings to Awakening really offers this timeless wisdom, you know?
It does.
That I think can help us navigate the complexities of modern life with more grace and intention.
Before we wrap up, I'd love to revisit some of the key points that we've talked about and see how we can apply them to our own experiences.
Yeah.
What stands out to you as the most impactful takeaway?
I think for me, it's the idea that the Buddha saw his entire path as a meta skill.
Okay.
A skill of developing skillful qualities.
Okay.
It's like he was saying that enlightenment isn't reserved for a select few, but is a set of skills anyone can cultivate.
Right.
Through dedicated practice.
That's so empowering. It's not about being inherently special or having some mystical experience. It's really about actively training our minds, refining our actions.
Exactly. And he really emphasized that this process of skill development is an ongoing journey.
Right. It's not like a destination you arrive at.
No, it's a process.
Yeah, it's a process.
Of constant refining, refining our actions, refining our intentions, refining even our awareness itself.
Right. And we talked about how crucial attention is in this process.
Yes.
You know, it's about learning to observe ourselves and the world around us with more clarity and more objectivity.
It takes practice.
It does. It's not easy.
The text offers some practical tips for cultivating what it calls appropriate attention.
Right.
Remember that idea of pausing before, during, and after our actions?
Yeah.
To reflect on what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah. It's like taking those mini mindfulness breaks throughout the day to just check in with ourselves.
Yes.
You know?
We can ask ourselves.
And ask ourselves.
Is this action skillful?
Right.
What's motivating me right now? Am I acting from wisdom and compassion?
Yeah.
Or am I being driven by something less skillful?
It's about becoming more aware of our motivations.
It is.
And the potential consequences of our actions.
Yes.
No matter how big or small they are.
It's a way of bringing more consciousness to our everyday lives.
The text also highlighted the importance of our relationship.
It did.
Of surrounding ourselves with people who embody those skillful qualities that we want to develop.
Yeah, having those positive role models can make a huge difference.
It can, and we talked about how It's not just about spending time with good people, but about actively seeking guidance and inspiration from people who are further along on the path.
Who've walked the walk.
Yeah. It's being intentional with who we learn from.
Yes.
It makes me think about the mentors that I've had in my life and how much I've learned from them.
Yeah.
Their examples have helped me to see what's possible and inspired me to keep growing.
But even with wise guidance, discernment is still crucial.
It is.
Remember what the Buddha told the Kalamas?
Yes.
Don't blindly follow tradition or authority.
Right.
Test things for yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's finding that balance between being open to learning from others and cultivating our own critical thinking skills.
We need both.
We do.
Yeah.
And speaking of learning from our experiences, the story of King Ajatasattu was such a powerful reminder that it's never too late.
It's never too late
to turn towards a more skillful path.
No.
Even if we've made significant mistakes in the past.
That story really stuck with me, too.
Me too.
It's so easy to get caught up in guilt and self-recrimination.
Yeah.
But the Buddha's message was one of
compassion
and possibility.
And possibility.
We can always choose to learn from our mistakes and move forward.
Yeah, we're not defined by our past actions.
No.
We can always choose a different path.
This whole conversation has been so illuminating for me.
Me too. I'm walking away with a renewed sense of agency.
Good.
And a deeper understanding of how I can apply these principles of skillfulness to my own life.
That's wonderful to hear. You know, this concept of skillfulness really invites us to approach life as this continuous journey of learning and refining and growing. And it's a path that's open to all of us.
I love that.
Regardless of our background or experience.
It's such a hopeful and empowering message.
It is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a question to ponder.
Okay.
What area of your life could you approach with more skillfulness? Maybe it's your work or your relationships, or even just the way you manage your own thoughts and emotions. The invitation is there.
It is.
To bring these ancient teachings into your present moment and see how they can enhance your experience.
That's a perfect ending.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of skillfulness.
It's been a pleasure.
May you cultivate wisdom, compassion, and skillful action in all areas of your life.